In this video, I'll be showing you how to change your clutch master cylinder and stop this from happening. Hello guys, thanks once again for being here. Today we're going to swap out the clutch master cylinder on this Ford Focus Mk1. I'll show you every step needed to get this swapped out so that your shoes don't end up looking like this. The Ford Focus Mk1 has its clutch master cylinder located inside the cabin above the clutch pedal. Some might say this is a super annoying design as it causes you to have wet shoes, but I actually think it's ingenious. There is no better way to get your attention than getting wet shoes, and when it comes to your clutch master cylinder going bad, you definitely want that to come to your attention. You see, the clutch and brake system on this car is linked. It's the same system, which means that when your clutch fluid is leaking, it's also your brake fluid that's leaking out. And the last thing you want on a car is brakes that don't work. So this, I think, is great. Thank you, Ford, for ruining my shoes and for making me aware that my car needs a clutch master cylinder fixed. Just another thing in a long line of things that this car needs fixing. But I'm not complaining, that's why I bought this car. I wanted lots of projects so that I can make videos for you guys. And having said that, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video to let me know that you're enjoying the content and that you'd like me to keep going. Alright, let's get this clutch master cylinder sorted out. So the tools you're going to need are a work light to look into all those nooks and crannies you'll be sticking your hand into, some paper towel or rags to keep things dry, brake cleaner to clean up any spilled brake fluid, gloves and eye protection for safety, rags and towels for stopping brake fluid from falling on your car, a brake bleeder bottle, a ratchet and extensions, an 8, a 10, an 11 and a 13mm socket, plus extensions for the sockets, an 11mm open ring spanner or a regular spanner if you don't have one, a 10mm spanner, Phillips head screwdrivers, a pick for getting hose clips out, and various size flat blade screwdrivers for prying and unscrewing. Then you'll also need a replacement clutch master cylinder, of course, and brake fluid. In the case of this manual 2-litre Zetec Focus here, it's Super .4 fluid you'll need. To start this process, you'll need to make yourself some room to work. The reservoir tank for the clutch and brake fluid on this car is located here. The clutch master cylinder goes into the car here. You're going to need to make some room for your hands to work and also to bleed the system afterwards. So to do that, we'll need to disconnect and remove the battery as well as the airbox assembly. This will give you enough room to get your hands in between the engine and the firewall to undo the nuts and clips holding the master cylinder to the car and also to bleed the system afterwards. Okay, so go ahead and take off your battery cover and undo the battery terminals. Then take a 30mm socket and wrench and undo the battery strap holding the battery tight to the car. And then the bolts holding the battery box in. Once you have all of those undone, go ahead and remove the battery box. With that removed, you will have good access to the bleed valve for the clutch system, located right here. We'll come back to this, but for now, move on ahead and take your air assembly off. So go ahead and disconnect your airflow sensor, undo the retaining clip on the throttle body intake using a flat blade screwdriver, and don't forget to disconnect the breather hose going into your airbox. Once all that's done, you will have much better access to the clutch system back here and the retaining clips and bolts that we'll need to undo on the firewall just underneath your throttle body. Speaking of your throttle body, take a rag or some paper towel and cover the opening to make sure you don't drop anything in there while working. Okay, so we're ready to remove the clutch master cylinder, and to do that, we actually have to start inside the car. So let's go in there now. Inside the car, you'll need to remove a few parts to get access to the clutch pedal. The first thing in our way is this kick panel. It's held on by a few bolts and also the OBD port, so go ahead and undo all the 5 bolts with a Phillips head screwdriver and then uncover and disconnect the OBD port from the kick panel. With the panel out of the way, we're starting to get some good access, but there are still a few things in the way. The next item to remove will be this air conditioning duct. Simply unscrew it here and it should slide right out. With that removed, you should now have a good view of the clutch master cylinder, but on right-hand drive cars, like this Focus, the steering column is in the way. So let's go ahead and remove a few other things here. Firstly, take off and disconnect the switches on the pedal assembly to make sure we don't snag on any wiring as we work. and then remove this upper duct as well, which rests on the steering column. You'll find one clip holding the duct in place behind the air vent on the driver's side of the dash. Use a long flat blade screwdriver to pry the clip out and the duct should come right out. Once that's gone, go ahead and disconnect the steering column. Now I know this may seem daunting or scary to some, but really it's just one 10mm bolt and it slides right out. Also, the steering column shaft is grooved, you can only put it back in one way, meaning there is no risk of your steering being off center when you reinstall it. It's super easy, so go ahead and do this. Okay, we finally have really good access to the clutch master cylinder, and the next step we'll need to take inside the car is to unscrew the clutch master cylinder from the pedal assembly using a 10mm wrench. So unscrew the bolts holding the clutch master cylinder in, and we're done for now inside the car. Heading outside to the firewall, it's now time to get the lines off the master cylinder. You will find two lines connected to the master cylinder, and to undo these two lines, all you have to do is pull out these two clips and the lines will slide right off. Now the important thing to keep in mind here is that as soon as you take these lines off, brake fluid will start pouring out. So you will need to work fast in plugging up the lines as soon as they are off to reduce the amount of fluid that will pour out. For this reason, and for the fact that it's really tight in here and there's no way I can hold the camera while taking the lines off, I'm going to put the camera down for a second and we'll come back once I have the lines off and the lines plugged up. Have an old towel or plastic bag underneath the lines catching any spilled fluid, and make sure you clean the area with brake cleaner afterwards. Okay, here we go. I'll take these off and be back in a moment. So that went pretty well. I lost a bit of fluid, but luckily I've got the towel underneath there catching most of it. For me, the top line was dripping the most, so I have that secured pretty well. The bottom line for me is not dripping at all, and that's probably because that's the line coming out of the master cylinder, which is now disconnected. So I didn't even bother plugging that one up. Make sure your brake fluid is above the minimum line in your reservoir tank, and you'll want to minimize the time these lines are open to air going into them, so let's move right ahead. The next step will be to undo the 8mm bolt holding the clutch master cylinder to the firewall. Again, space is pretty tight here, so I'm quickly going to undo the bolt and get right back to you. So here you go, the bolt is out. It's not a hard bolt to remove, it isn't torqued down that tight. And with the bolt out, let's head back into the car and take out the old clutch master cylinder. Go ahead and slide off the clutch pedal connecting arm and then loosen the 4 bolts holding the pedal assembly in. Doing this will give you some wiggle room to slide the master cylinder assembly out. Go ahead and give it a gentle nudge with a flat screwdriver if yours is a bit stubborn like mine. With the old master cylinder out, grab your replacement unit and check that everything is in order, then head over to the car. Assembly is the reverse of disassembly, so line up the 2 holes in the firewall and feed the master cylinder through. Then line up the tabs and reattach the master cylinder arm to the clutch pedal. With that done, go ahead and screw in the 2 bolts that attach the master cylinder to the pedal assembly. Then tighten down the 4 bolts holding the pedal assembly to the firewall. Finally, align the metal tab with the screw hole and head outside to put the bolt in. Back outside, you're going to put the bolt back in, but space is really tight, so use a bit of blue tack to stick the bolt to your socket, which will stop it from falling out, and feed the bolt through the hole. Tighten the bolt up and the new master cylinder should be sitting firm and secure in your car. With everything lined up, go ahead and remove the dust covers from the inlet and outlet pipe on the new clutch master cylinder and push the 2 lines back on. Before you do, pull out the retaining clips from their seats, and when you've pushed the lines on, reinsert the clips. Apologies again for not having video of this, the space was just too tight. Okay, your lines are back on, the retaining clips are in, and it's time to get the air out of the system. The first thing to do is to top up your brake fluid reservoir to the maximum mark with the recommended grade brake fluid. For the Mk1 Zetec Focus with a manual transmission, the fluid is Super .4. Make sure you check the grade for your car before topping up. Then take a brake bleeder bottle and fill it halfway with fresh brake fluid. This will make sure that as you bleed the system, if there is any backward pressure during the bleeding process, the lines will suck up brake fluid and not air. Head over and attach the bleeder hose to the clutch bleeder screw. The nut here is an 11mm nut, and you really want to use an open ring spanner if you can. Mine wasn't narrow enough for this area, so I had to use a regular 11mm spanner, but I ran the risk of stripping this bolt, so if you can, you should definitely use an open ring spanner. With a helper in the car pumping and then holding the clutch pedal down, open the bleeder screw and let some of the fluid out. Continue this process until no more bubbles appear in the line. Once your fluid is bled of air, go over the areas you worked on with brake cleaner to remove any brake fluid that may have spilled out of your lines. Brake fluid will eat paint off surfaces, so make sure you clean up after you're done. Back inside the car, give everything a one final check over to make sure you don't have any leaks, and if everything looks good, it's time for reassembly. Again, everything is the reverse order of disassembly, so start by replacing the air vent above the steering column, then go ahead and reattach the steering column, reinstall the brake switch, followed by the clutch, reinstall the footwell air conduct, place the driver's side air duct back on, clip the OBD port back onto the kick panel, reinstall the kick panel using the 5 bolts, and reattach the OBD port cover. And with that, the interior is reassembled. Do one final check on the clutch and brake pedals to make sure they are nice and firm and not losing their firmness. If they are fine, it's time to head outside. Back outside, reattach your air intake duct, followed by the battery tray using the 13mm bolts, and then reinstall the battery and secure it down using the battery strap. Reinstall the air assembly by reattaching the breather hose, plugging the mass airflow sensor back in, and tightening up the intake duct to the throttle body. Finally, reconnect the battery and the car should be done. Let's go start her up and see how we did. Clutch in, pedal feels good. Ignition on, and we're running nicely. Just check that your gears engage properly, test out the clutch pedal a few times, and go ahead and take a test drive. You should be done. I hope you like what you saw, and more importantly, like me, I hope you've learned something new today. If you agree, please let me know by giving this video a like. Did I miss something? Do you have anything to add? Feel free to leave a comment below. I always welcome constructive feedback. And if you'd like to see more content from the channel, please subscribe and click the bell so that you'll know when I post up something new. Now enough chit chat, go ahead and try this yourself on your car.